At 13:47 hours on October 14, 1943, Hauptmann Wilhelm Mayer pushes his Focke-Wulf 190 A6 through -50-degree air above Schweinfurt. The 29-year-old from Munich has 38 B-17 kills painted on his rudder. Number 39 limps before him, a flying fortress from the 305th Bomb Group, trailing smoke, her tail gunner position shattered, one engine feathered. Mayer knows exactly where to strike. He's perfected the 12 o'clock high attack that American gunners fear most. Inside the wounded bomber, Staff Sergeant Anthony Russo, 22 from Brooklyn, swings his top turret toward the approaching fighter. His twin .50 calibers have 17 seconds of ammunition left. The intercom crackles with Pilot Lieutenant James Crawford's voice. "Fighter, 12 high, coming in fast." Mayer rolls inverted, beginning his dive. This is the deadly dance. German aces hunting America's heaviest bombers, like wolves circling wounded elk. What happens in the next 40 seconds will spark a revolution in aerial combat. The hunter is about to discover that sometimes the prey develops new teeth. But first, 23 Americans must die to prove the old tactics no longer work. Mayer's cannon shells tear through aluminum skin-like paper. Russo's turret explodes in a shower of plexiglass and hydraulic fluid. Crawford's B-17 rolls left, beginning her final spiral toward German soil. She's the 59th Flying Fortress lost today, a 26% loss rate that will mark Black Thursday as the darkest day in 8th Air Force history. The Luftwaffe has turned bomber killing into lethal science. Their Sturmbok tactics, refined over 18 months of combat, exploit every B-17 weakness. Head-on attacks target the thin nose armor, just 9mm of steel between pilots and 20-meter cannon shells. Diving attacks from 12 o'clock high put fighters in the bomber's blind spot for crucial seconds. The manual says B-17 gunners can engage targets at 600 yards. Reality proves German pilots close to 200 yards before opening fire, inside the convergence zone, where American guns can't track fast enough. General Henry Hap Arnold still preaches his doctrine from Washington. The bomber will always get through. His staff calculates acceptable losses at 5%. Over Germany, mathematics meets Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs flown by Experten, super aces like Mayer, Egon Meyer, no relation, and Georg Peter Eder. These men study B-17 formations like chess masters, identifying weak positions, isolated stragglers, gaps in defensive coverage. The Flying Fortress bristles with 1350 caliber machine guns, yet German aces treat them like slow-moving targets at a gunnery range. Standard defensive doctrine calls for individual gunners to protect assigned sectors. But when a Focke-Wulf screams in at 400 miles per hour, sectors overlap, guns interfere with each other, and Americans die. The system is broken. The evidence falls from the sky, in burning pieces. Among those burning pieces, falling toward Schweinfurt, is Lieutenant Robert Hughes, B-17G Patches, from the 100th Bomb Group. Hughes, 24, from Emporia, Kansas, wrote his wife Betty 3 days ago. "The forts are tough birds, honey. Don't worry about me." Oberleutnant Heinz Bär's FW-190 catches Patches climbing to rejoin formation after a flak hit. Bär, credited with 179 kills, needs 12 seconds. His 20mm cannons walk from nose to tail, methodical as a sewing machine. Navigator Second Lieutenant Paul Grassi, 22, from Philadelphia, dies at his chart table, pencil still in hand, calculating the heading home he'll never use. Radio operator Technical Sergeant Eugene Dahl, 19, from Moorhead, Minnesota, burns alive in his compartment, screaming into a dead microphone. 20 miles east, Staff Sergeant Tony Bartolo mans the tail guns of Heaven Can Wait. The 21-year-old from Providence wrote his mother yesterday, "My position is the safest. Ma, I can see them coming." Major Walter Dahl, Germany's ramming specialist, proves him wrong. Dahl's approach from 7 o'clock low puts him under Bartolo's guns. The first 30mm shell from Dahl's Mk-108 cannon vaporizes Bartolo's left leg. The second takes his head. Ball. Turret gunner. Sergeant Michael O'Brien watches his friend's blood freeze instantly in the slipstream, coating the fuselage like red paint. Carolina Queen, sister ship to the famous Memphis Belle, survives until 1402 hours. Hauptmann Klaus Mietusch, 72 victories, executes a textbook high-side attack. Pilot Lieutenant Charles Anderson, 25, from Charlotte, fights his dying fortress for 6 minutes. His co-pilot, Lieutenant William Dasher, 23, from Buffalo, radios their position until flames reach the cockpit. Bombardier Lieutenant James Vance, 26, from Dallas, trapped in the nose by jammed hatches, watches the ground rise to meet him. He's thinking about his 2-year-old daughter Susan, whom he's seen only in photographs. 8 of 10 crew members die in the explosion. The 2 survivors, thrown clear, will spend the war in Stalag Luftwaffe, waking nightly to the sound of Vance screaming. These aren't statistics. They're American boys who played high school football, took girls to dances, and volunteered to fly through hell. Today, 60 B-17s won't return. 600 empty bunks tonight. 600 families about to receive Western Union telegrams. But one man, watching from a hard stand in England, has seen enough. That man is Master Sergeant James Hewitt, standing in the October drizzle at Bassingbourn Airfield, counting empty hard stands. The 38-year-old chief armorer of the 91st Bomb Group has watched this slaughter unfold for 18 months. Today, only 17 of the group's 21 fortresses returned. Hewitt walks among them now, studying battle damage with the eye of someone who's examined over 200 shot-up bombers. He knows every rivet, every armor plate, every field modification. More importantly, he knows what kills B-17 crews and what saves them. Born in Akron, Ohio, Hewitt worked at Goodyear Aircraft before enlisting. He understands the Browning M2 50-caliber machine gun better than most men understand their wives. Cyclic rate of 450 to 600 rounds per minute. Muzzle velocity of 2,910 feet per second. Effective range of 2,000 yards. But numbers on paper mean nothing when a Messerschmitt closes at 500 miles per hour. He's noticed something the brass haven't. The bombers that survive share specific damage patterns. Their gunners fired differently than doctrine prescribed. Instead of tracking individual targets, these crews created overlapping fields of fire, synchronized bursts that German pilots couldn't predict or evade. Hewitt touches a line of cannon holes stitched across Yankee Doodle's waist, 6 inches lower, and Gunner Sergeant Ray Peterson would be hamburger. Peterson lived because his crew abandoned the manual during their 3rd mission, developing their own defensive rhythm. Hewitt has interviewed 43 surviving gunners. Each tells the same story. Official tactics get you killed. The revelation that will save thousands of American lives starts here with a middle-aged sergeant who pays attention to details others miss. 3 days after Black Thursday, Hewitt stands before Colonel Claude Putnam in the 91st's headquarters. "Sir, we lost 43% of our gunners. The manual's getting them killed." Putnam, exhausted from writing condolence letters, barely looks up. "The manual comes from right field, Sergeant. Men with stars on their shoulders wrote it." Hewitt knows arguing is pointless. The colonel has his own nightmares, ordering men to fly missions he knows will kill them. That night, Hewitt makes a decision that could end his career, or save hundreds of lives. At 2300 hours, he unlocks the armament shed. Inside, 10 spare 50-caliber barrels gleam under bare bulbs. By hour 200, he's transformed the space into an unauthorized classroom. He sketches German attack patterns on a salvaged blackboard, diagrams showing the fatal gaps in standard defensive doctrine. His hands shake slightly, not from fear, but from 18 months of suppressed rage. The manual says gunners should fire 3-second bursts to avoid overheating. The manual says track your target through your assigned sector only. The manual says maintain trigger discipline, conserve ammunition. The manual is killing kids from Iowa and Texas and Brooklyn. Hewitt writes new rules on stolen paper. Forget sectors when under attack. Create boxes of lead the Krauts must fly through. Time your bursts with adjacent gunners. Make the bastards flinch. He's violating Article 92 of military justice, willful disobedience of lawful orders, maximum penalty, dishonorable discharge, and 2 years confinement. But tomorrow, 12 crews will fly to Bremen. Without new tactics, 5 won't return. At Euro 4:30, Hewitt wakes Staff Sergeant Tom Morrison, his best gunnery instructor. Tom, I need you to trust me, and I need you to forget everything the Army taught you about defensive fire. Morrison stares at Hewitt's diagrams in the yellow lamplight. Jim, this is insane. You're talking about turning individual gunners into a single weapon system. Hewitt nods. Exactly. The Germans expect scattered defensive fire. We give them coordinated death. The concept is elegantly brutal. Instead of 10 gunners firing independently, Hewitt envisions synchronized bursts, creating 3-dimensional boxes of lead. Killing zones German fighters must penetrate to attack. He's calculated the mathematics on envelope backs. At 600 yards, a .50 caliber bullet deviates 18 inches from point of aim. 10 guns firing coordinated patterns create a lethal probability cone 40 feet wide, 30 feet high. The system requires precise timing. Tail gunner initiates with a 2-second burst. Waist gunners count 1 Mississippi, then fire. Top turret joins on 2 Mississippi. Ball turret completes the box. The pattern repeats every 8 seconds, adjusted for fighter approach angle. Hewitt demonstrates with wooden gun mock-ups, showing how overlapping fields create no safe passage. Think of it like a threshing machine. Anything entering gets shredded. Physical modifications prove crucial. Standard gun mounts allow 65-degree traverse, insufficient for coordinated fire. Using salvaged parts from wrecked B-17s, Hewitt fabricates extended pivot pins, increasing traverse to 85 degrees. He rigs communication lights between gun positions, red for fighter attacking, green for comments box pattern. Now, the intercom supplements, but doesn't replace visual signals. When cannon shells sever wires, lights still function. Morrison tests the modified mounts, swinging the .50 caliber in wider arcs. The gun barrel traces deadly geometry against the shed wall. The recoil will be brutal with this traverse angle, he observes. Hewitt's already solved that. Rubber padding from destroyed May West life vests cushions the gunner's shoulder. Everything comes from salvage. Nothing appears on requisition forms. At Euro 600, 12 volunteer gunners file into the shed. Hewitt locks the door. Gentlemen, forget everything about defensive fire. Today you learn to build a box that kills Messerschmitts. November 26, 1943. 11:42 hours, 27,000 feet over Bremen. Staff Sergeant Ray Peterson grips his modified waist gun aboard Yankee Doodle, watching contrails streak across crystalline sky. The temperature reads -42 Celsius. His crew trained with Hewitt for 3 weeks in secret, drilling the box barrage until their timing became instinct. Now, Peterson spots them, 12 FW-190s, climbing from 2 o'clock low, iron cross markings visible at 800 yards. His throat mic clicks. Bandits, 2 o'clock climbing. Here we go, boys. Leading the German formation is Oberleutnant Klaus Mietusch, the same ace who killed Carolina Queen over Schweinfurt. 72 victory marks decorate his fighter. He's perfected the high-side gunnery pass that American gunners can't counter. At 600 yards, Mietusch rolls inverted, beginning his attack dive. Inside Yankee Doodle, tail gunner Sergeant Frank Centrone watches the Focke-Wulf grow in his sight. Red light, red light. The signal flashes through gun positions. Centrone counts 2 heartbeats, then squeezes his triggers. The box barrage erupts. Centrone fires 2 seconds. Peterson and left waist gunner Sergeant Bill Maxwell join precisely on count. Top turret gunner Sergeant Angelo Spinelli swings his twin 50s in a practiced arc, adding his stream to the pattern. Ball turret gunner Sergeant Eddie Slovic completes the box from below. 10 Brownings create a 3-dimensional cage of tracers, red, lines intersecting where Mietusch must fly to reach attack position. The synchronized thunder shakes the entire airframe, spent brass cascades like golden rain through the fuselage. Mietusch expects scattered defensive fire he can slip through. Instead, he flies into a meat grinder. The first 50 caliber round punches through his canopy at 11:43:22. The second destroys his instrument panel. The third and fourth tear into his BMW 801 engine. Coolant sprays across his windscreen. Oil pressure drops to 0. Mietusch brakes hard right, but the box follows him, gunners adjusting their pattern as drilled. More rounds find their mark. His engine seizes, propeller windmilling uselessly. German wingman Feldwebel Hans Müller watches Germany's premier ace trailing black smoke. Mietusch is hit, breaking off. The remaining FW-190s scatter, stunned by the coordinated defense. 2 more fighters trail smoke, victims of the lethal box. Radio chatter fills German frequencies. What happened? They're firing differently. Abort! Abort! At 11:44:30, Mietusch's Focke-Wulf enters a flat spin. The ace who terrorized American bombers for 2 years plummets toward Bremen, taking his expertise to a frozen grave. But this is only the beginning. Within hours, Mietusch's death reverberates through Luftwaffe fighter wings. At Oldenburg Airfield, Major Heinz Bär interrogates the surviving pilots from JG-26. Feldwebel Müller, still shaking from the encounter, describes what he witnessed. Herr Mayer, it was like flying into a steel curtain. The Americans created walls of fire, synchronized, overlapping, no gaps to exploit. Bär, who's destroyed 96 B-17s, struggles to comprehend. The Americans have always been predictable, their defensive fire scattered and manageable. This coordinated barrage represents something new, something deadly. Luftwaffe intelligence scrambles to understand the change. Oberst Gordon Golob, inspector of day fighters, compiles pilot reports from 6 encounters over the next week. The language is remarkably consistent. Interlocking fire zones, impossible accuracy, synchronized bursts. Lieutenant Wolfgang Spater of JG-11 writes, "The defensive fire no longer follows individual fighters. It creates predetermined killing zones we must traverse. 3 aircraft from my Staffel suffered major damage attempting standard attack approaches." General Adolf Galland, Germany's fighter commander, reviews the reports in Berlin. The 31-year-old ace knows American tactics intimately. He studied them for 3 years. His assessment to Reichsmarschall Göring is blunt. The Americans have revolutionized bomber defense overnight. Our standard attack doctrines are obsolete. Galland orders immediate tactical changes, head-on attacks, the Luftwaffe's most successful. Technique becomes suicide missions against synchronized defensive boxes. High-side passes put fighters in overlapping fire zones for too long. The solution demands longer-range attacks with 30mm cannon, reducing accuracy but keeping pilots alive. The psychological impact proves equally devastating. German pilots who once attacked with confidence now hesitate. Hauptmann Anton Hackel of JG-11 admits, "We've lost the initiative. Instead of hunting, we're calculating survival odds." The life expectancy of new Luftwaffe pilots attacking box barrage formations drops to 4 missions. Veterans like Bär adapt, but the golden age of German bomber killing is ending. The hunters have become the hunted. The hunters may be confused, but American gunners are talking. At the Brass Rail pub in Cambridge, December 3, 1943, Sergeant Ray Peterson buys drinks for gunners from the 381st Bomb Group. After 3 whiskeys, he sketches Hewitt's box pattern on a napkin. "We haven't lost a ship to fighters in 5 missions," he whispers. Technical Sergeant Joe Amaral from the 381st stares at the diagram. His crew lost 2 waist gunners last week, both friends from training at Kingman. By closing time, Amaral has memorized every detail. The system spreads like wildfire through the underground network that keeps bomber crews alive. Gunners meet in latrines, mess halls, and hardstand shadows, sharing forbidden knowledge. At Ridgewell, home of the 381st, Amaral trains his crew using Hewitt's methods. They practice behind Hangar 3 at night, timing bursts by counting Mississippis. Within 2 weeks, 4 crews have adopted the box barrage. Their first mission to Munster sees 0 losses to fighters, unprecedented for the bloody 381st. Resistance comes swiftly from official channels. Colonel Joseph Muller, commanding the 94th Bomb Group, discovers unauthorized gunnery drills at Bury St. Edmunds. He summons Master Sergeant Carl Fritzsche, caught teaching the box system. "Sergeant, the Army spent $2 million developing defensive doctrine at Aberdeen Proving Ground. You think you know better?" Fritzsche, who's buried 18 gunners in 3 months, responds carefully. "Sir, Aberdeen never faced FW-190s. Muller orders him confined to quarters, pending court-martial. But evidence mounts faster than brass, can suppress it. The 91st reports a 73% reduction in fighter losses. The 381st's gunners claim 12 German fighters in December, using coordinated fire. The 100th, the bloody 100th, sees its first month without catastrophic losses after adopting Hewitt's tactics. Mission reports pile on 8th Air Force Commander General Jimmy Doolittle's desk. Statistics don't lie. Groups using the box barrage survive at twice the rate of those following doctrine. By Christmas 1943, over 200 crews practice Hewitt's system in secret. The revolution has become unstoppable. The revolution reaches critical mass on January 8, 1944, when Major General Curtis LeMay arrives at Bassingbourn for an unscheduled inspection. LeMay, commanding the 3rd Air Division, built his reputation on precision, formations, bombing, and especially defensive doctrine. At 14:30 hours, he discovers 12 gunners practicing coordinated fire patterns behind a revetment. His face darkens. "Who authorized this?" Master Sergeant Hewitt steps forward. "I did, General." The temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. LeMay's headquarters at Elvedon Hall erupts 2 hours later. "Hewitt violated 17 regulations," shouts Colonel Charles Travis, LeMay's operations officer. "Court-martial him and anyone using these tactics." But Colonel Frank Castle, who commands the 94th Group, interjects, "General, my losses dropped 60% after crews adopted this system. You want me to order them back to tactics that get them killed?" The room divides. Staff officers who've never seen combat versus group commanders watching their men die. LeMay, famous for his analytical mind, studies loss reports spread across his desk. Groups using unauthorized tactics, 7% losses. Groups following doctrine, 19% losses. The mathematics are irrefutable. He turns to his intelligence officer, Major Thomas Power. "Get me everything. Gun camera footage, German pilot interrogations, mission reports." For 40 minutes, LeMay absorbs data in silence. Finally he speaks. "Travis, draft orders for a formal study. Castle, your gunners will demonstrate these tactics tomorrow at 0800. The demonstration changes everything. Watching synchronized. "Defensive fire," LeMay mutters. "Why didn't we think of this?" Within 72 hours, he orders all 3rd Division groups to begin transition training. Hewitt's court-martial disappears. Sometimes, saving lives matters more than following rules. LeMay's decision triggers the most comprehensive tactical analysis in 8th Air Force history. Major Thomas Power's team compiles data from every bomb group, every mission, every encounter. By February 1944, the statistics are staggering. Before Hewitt's innovation, bomber losses to fighter attack averaged 26% during deep penetration raids. Groups trained in box barrage tactics report 7% losses, a 73% reduction. The 91st Bomb Group, first to adopt the system, hasn't lost a single B-17 to fighters in 6 weeks. German records, captured post-war, confirm the revolution's impact. Luftwaffe ace kill rates against B-17s plummet from 4.2 per sortie to 1.6, a 60% decrease. Major Günther Rall, Germany's third-ranking ace, notes in his diary, "The Americans have learned to bite. Attacking their bombers now costs us our best pilots." Between December 1943 and May 1945, the Luftwaffe loses 2,442 fighters attacking bomber formations, double their losses from the war's first 3 years. The human equation proves most compelling. Statistical analysis shows 2,400 American airmen survived missions they should have died on, directly attributable to coordinated defensive tactics. That's 240 complete bomber crews. Technical Sergeant Joseph Amaral, who learned the system in a Cambridge pub, completes 35 missions without losing a single gunner. Before adopting Hewitt's tactics, his squadron averaged 3 gunners killed per mission. Multiply that across 40 bomb groups flying 300 days of combat, and the numbers become breathtaking. Colonel Frank Castle presents the final analysis to General Doolittle. "Sir, one master sergeant's innovation saved more American lives than any technological advancement except long-range fighter escorts." Doolittle, studying photographs of young airmen who lived because Hewitt broke regulations, responds quietly, "Sometimes the best ideas come from men who touch the guns, not the ones who write the manuals." Doolittle's observation proves prophetic. Within months of Germany's surrender, Wright Field engineers study captured Luftwaffe reports, discovering German pilots feared Hewitt's box barrage more than any defensive innovation, except the P-51 Mustang. The Army Air Force's technical school at Lowry Field incorporates coordinated defensive fire into its curriculum by August 1945. The mimeographed manual credits combat-developed tactics without mentioning Hewitt's name. Typical military bureaucracy, claiming innovation after the fact. The Korean War validates Hewitt's principles in the jet age. B-29. Superfortresses facing MiG-15s adopt modified box patterns adjusted for jet speeds. Major Robert McNamara, analyzing combat data for Strategic Air Command, discovers synchronized defensive fire reduces losses by 67% against jet fighters. The principle remains constant. Coordinated defense beats individual marksmanship. By 1952, every USAF bomber crew trains in derivatives of Hewitt's system. Vietnam brings further evolution. B-52 crews facing surface-to-air missiles adapt the box concept to electronic warfare. Instead of bullets, they create overlapping fields of chaff and jamming signals, electronic boxes that confuse missile guidance. Lieutenant Colonel John Warden, flying B-52s over Hanoi, notes, "We're using the same principle Hewitt discovered, synchronized, overlapping defensive zones. Only now it's electrons instead of lead." Modern combat aviation embraces Hewitt's philosophy completely. F-15E Strike Eagles employ coordinated defensive maneuvers, creating geometric patterns that maximize mutual support. Navy Super Hornets practice defensive boxes using infrared flares and chaff. The terminology changes. Integrated defensive systems, synchronized countermeasures, networked defense, but the core concept remains. Even drone warfare incorporates these principles, with autonomous systems creating overlapping defensive zones. The revolution sparked in a maintenance shed at Bassingbourn now appears in every air combat manual worldwide. Chinese, Russian, and NATO doctrine all emphasize coordinated defense over individual action. A master sergeant who broke regulations to save lives inadvertently rewrote the fundamental principles of aerial warfare. His innovation transcends technology, proving that tactical genius often emerges from those closest to combat. That tactical genius returns to Akron in November 1945, carrying a Bronze Star he never requested and memories he'll never share. James Hewitt resumes work at Goodyear Aircraft, designing brake systems for commercial airliners. His colleagues know nothing about the box barrage or the 2,400 lives saved. When asked about his service, Hewitt responds simply, "I maintained guns." He dies in 1987, his obituary mentioning only, "served with distinction in the Army Air Forces." The gunners remember differently. Ray Peterson organizes the first Box Barrage Brotherhood reunion in Chicago. 1950, 43 gunners attend, each wearing a small badge, the cross-haired box pattern Hewitt sketched that night in 1943. They toast absent friends and the sergeant who kept them alive. By 1960, the reunions draw 200 veterans. Stories flow like whiskey. Synchronized fire over Berlin. Messerschmitts breaking off attacks. The day they learned they weren't crazy for abandoning the manual. The most extraordinary reunion occurs in Munich, October 1965. Peterson corresponds with Luftwaffe veteran Heinz Müller, who witnessed Mietusch's death. Müller extends an invitation. Meet the men you fought. 8 American gunners travel to Germany. In a small gasthouse, they share beer with former enemies. Müller introduces Feldwebel Kurt Schulze, whose FW-190 Peterson's crew damaged over Hanover. Schulze limps, his right leg shattered by 50 caliber rounds. "You shot well," he tells Peterson, raising his stein. "Too well." The evening's most poignant moment comes when Schulze produces a photograph, his fighter squadron, 1943. He points to young faces, Klaus Mietusch, Wilhelm Mayer, Georg Eder, all killed by your box system. Silence falls. Then Schulze adds, "They were warriors. They would respect what you achieved." American and German veterans stand, toasting fallen comrades on both sides. Wars end. Respect between warriors endures. In that Munich gasthouse, Hewitt's innovation finally brings peace. In that Munich gasthouse, former enemies discover a truth the Pentagon took decades to acknowledge. The best innovations come from those who bleed, not those who brief. Hewitt's box barrage saved more American lives than any general's strategy or politician's promise. While Washington debated bomber production rates, a master sergeant with grease under his fingernails revolutionized aerial combat using salvaged parts and stolen blackboards. The pattern repeats throughout military history. Vietnam grunts develop tactics that West Point later teaches. Iraq veterans jury-rig armor that defense contractors eventually manufacture. Afghanistan soldiers create counter-IED techniques that become official doctrine. The lesson remains constant. Listen to the specialists, the sergeants, the ones who smell cordite and fear. They innovate because their lives depend on it, not because committees convene. Modern military doctrine finally embraces this reality. The Army's Rapid Equipping Force specifically seeks soldier-driven innovations. Marines conduct innovation challenges, where lance corporals present ideas to generals. The Air Force created innovation labs at operational bases, recognizing that airmen maintaining 40-year-old aircraft often understand problems better than engineers with fresh degrees. They call it tactical innovation. But it's simply Hewitt's philosophy. Those closest to the fight see solutions others miss. Today's military academies teach adaptive thinking, but the real classroom remains where it always was. The flight line, the motor pool, the places where young Americans prepare for combat and quietly revolutionize warfare. Those young Americans changed history with Mississippi counts and modified gun mounts. German aces like Mietusch died with honor. American gunners like Peterson lived through ingenuity. Both deserve remembrance. Somewhere in your family's history, a grandfather, great-uncle, or distant cousin may have flown these missions, maintained these guns, or innovated their own survival. Their stories matter. Share them below. The modifications, the tactics, the small acts of genius that brought warriors home. What forgotten innovations did your family witness? What other Hewitts revolutionized warfare from maintenance sheds and flight lines? Their legacy lives in every coordinated defense, every tactical adaptation, every moment when those who touch the weapons outsmart those who write the rules. Remember them all.